I'll never forget the sound of the wrapping paper being torn. It was the only noise anyone could hear. No music, no laughter, just that quiet crinkle as my daughter Maya carefully unwrapped her gift. Her small fingers tugged at the corners as if it were the most precious thing in the world, and for a moment, she actually smiled. That gentle, hopeful smile children get when they believe magic might still exist. But when she opened the box, her entire expression shifted. Confusion came first, then a flicker of something deeper, pain perhaps. Her little shoulders stiffened and she glanced at me. The box was empty. I saw it before she said anything, just a plain cardboard bottom. No tissue paper, no gift, not even a note. I blinked, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. Was it a mistake? Had something fallen out? But before I could speak, I heard him, my father Theodore. He released a sharp laugh, cold and abrupt like a bark in winter. He settled back in his armchair, crossed his arms, and declared, "Children like her shouldn't expect anything. The world has enough entitled people already." My heart sank. Maya froze, her hand still in the box as if she hadn't yet discovered the gift might be hiding under the flaps or tucked in a corner. But there was nothing. I felt heat rising in my chest. My hands trembled where they rested on my lap. I wanted to respond, but the words caught in my throat like splinters. Then Victoria, my sister, scoffed and muttered, "She's just like her mother, always expecting handouts." Predictable. My jaw tightened. I could feel the muscles in my face constricting, the burning behind my eyes threatening to spill over. I forced myself to look at Maya. She wasn't crying, not yet, but her lips were pressed together, and her chin was quivering the way it does right before breaking. Her eyes, those large, gentle eyes, were filling with tears she was too proud to let fall. She looked at me again, not asking for help, just checking if she should pretend it didn't hurt. In that moment, I detested myself. I hated that I brought her here, that I foolishly hoped for a normal Christmas, that I thought my father might be different. I wanted them to see the beautiful, kind, creative girl Maya was and love her as I did. But they didn't see her. To them, she was merely an extension of me, a reminder of my divorce, my failures, the mess I'd made of my life according to their standards. The room was completely silent except for the soft hum of the heater and the ticking of the grandfather clock behind Theodore's chair. Each second sounded louder than the last, as if counting down to a moment I wasn't prepared for. Maya looked down at the empty box again. Her fingers brushed the edge, then slowly she folded the flap shut. Her hands were shaking now, and then she whispered something. "I made you a gift too, Grandpa." Everyone turned. Theodore looked up, that smug smile still on his face. "Oh really?" he said, half laughing. "This should be interesting." But Maya didn't retreat. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper folded with such care it made my chest ache. She stepped forward and held it out to him with both hands, and right then I knew this moment wasn't finished. Something was coming that none of us were prepared for. I hadn't returned home for Christmas in over 2 years, not since the divorce, not since the shame, not since everything I'd been trying to maintain finally broke apart completely. Maya wanted to see them. She had asked me 3 weeks before Christmas, "Mom, do I have a grandfather?" That was her way of asking why we were always alone during the holidays, why we didn't have matching pajamas or elaborate trees or cousins to play with. So I said yes, and when she asked if we could visit him this year, I agreed again, against my better judgment. I don't know what I anticipated. Perhaps I thought time might have softened them. Maybe I believed just briefly that when they saw Maya, when they truly looked at her, they would feel something. Warmth, regret, love, anything. Instead, the moment we pulled into the driveway, I felt that familiar weight settle back onto my shoulders, that invisible tension that wraps around your ribs like barbed wire when you're trying to smile for people who don't really want you present. Their house remained unchanged, still austere, still immaculate, still spotless in that way that feels less like a home and more like a museum. My mother greeted us with that artificial pleasantness she perfected over the years, a quick embrace for me, gentle pat on the head for Maya. Her gaze lingered too long on the scuff marks on Maya's boots. I noticed how she assessed her, like an item on a shelf, deciding whether she belonged. Victoria barely looked up from her phone when we entered. She offered Maya a half-hearted "hey," then returned to scrolling. I could already feel my stomach clenching. And then there was Theodore, my father. He was in his customary chair by the fireplace, whiskey glass in one hand, television remote in the other. He didn't even stand, just gave a nod and muttered, "Didn't think you'd actually appear." That was his version of hello. Maya gave him a shy wave, her mittened fingers poking through the wool. "Hi, Grandpa," she said quietly, as if testing a word aloud for the first time. He grunted in response. I don't know why I still hoped for more. Maybe because Maya was trying so earnestly. She had created small drawings for everyone, carefully colored, folded, and tucked into envelopes with their names on the front. She even asked me how to spell Aunt Victoria because she wanted it to be perfect. She worked on them every evening for a week. I wanted this to be special for her. I wanted her to feel like she had a family, even if they were far from ideal. I gathered what I could from tips and extra shifts just to buy her one nice outfit, a small gift to open, and enough gas to get us there. That morning, as I tied her scarf, she looked up at me and asked, "Do you think they'll like my drawings?" I replied, "Sweetheart, they're going to love them." But in the pit of my stomach, I already knew the truth. I was bringing her into a house where kindness was currency they never dispensed freely, where smiles were measured and love had conditions. Still, I tried. I told myself this was about Maya, not me, that I could maintain my composure, be polite, pretend for one day that everything was fine. But as I watched her heart quietly break in front of them over something as cruel as an empty gift box, I realized they hadn't changed, and I wasn't sure they ever would. Maya distributed her little envelopes like they were treasures. She moved through the room so gently, as if afraid to disturb anything. Each envelope had a name on the front written in her careful, blocky handwriting. She gave one to my mother first, then Victoria, then even my brother Mark, who had barely spoken since we arrived. When she reached Theodore, she paused briefly, just long enough that I held my breath. But she smiled, extended the envelope, and said, "Merry Christmas, Grandpa." He didn't look up from the television, just held out his hand as if she were delivering mail, not offering a piece of herself. She returned to the couch and sat beside me, her face still illuminated with hope. She had no idea how cold the room had become. Then Theodore lifted a large box from beneath the tree. It was wrapped in silver paper, topped with a red bow, almost too perfectly. He held it toward Maya with a grunt. "For me?" she asked. He shrugged. "Has your name, doesn't it?" She looked at me first, as if seeking permission. I nodded, even though something in my gut twisted. She moved to the floor and pulled the box onto her lap. Her small hands caressed the paper as if it were sacred. I watched her savor every moment, the careful removal of each piece of tape, the methodical unfolding. She wanted to preserve the memory. Then the lid came off. She peered inside, and I witnessed the exact moment she realized it was empty. Her face didn't crumple immediately. Instead, her eyebrows drew together in confusion. She reached in as if something might be concealed at the bottom. She looked up at me, uncertain. There was nothing in the box. Nothing. Theodore laughed loudly this time. "What were you expecting? Something real?" He scoffed, leaning back. "The world doesn't give you gifts just for showing up, kid." Maya blinked. Her hands froze. I couldn't move. Then Victoria, always waiting for an opportunity to inflict pain, chimed in from her corner of the couch. "Well, she is just like her mother, always expecting people to give her things. It's hardly surprising." I felt it in my chest like a physical blow. I turned to her. "Victoria, don't." She raised an eyebrow, smirking. "What?" "It's true." Maya was silent now. The box still rested in her lap, flaps wide open, exposing the emptiness inside. The room had turned against her, and I saw her realize it. I hated them. I hated them for making her feel insignificant, for making her question her worth, for laughing as if it were all a joke. I reached for her, but she didn't move. She just kept staring at the box as if it might somehow fill itself if she waited long enough. Inside, I was screaming, "Say something. Stand up. Defend her." But I didn't want to create a scene, not in front of her. That's the thing about families like this. You learn to freeze when things turn cruel. You learn to smile through clenched teeth, and I'd spent so many years doing exactly that it almost felt normal. But it wasn't normal. Maya was only 7. She didn't know how to wear a mask yet. She didn't know how to swallow that kind of pain. Then she looked up at Theodore. Her voice was quiet, barely more than a whisper, but it cut through the room like a bell. "It's okay," she said. "I made you a gift too, Grandpa." And just like that, the entire room shifted. No one spoke. No one laughed. She reached into her coat pocket, and I realized something was about to happen that none of them would forget. I watched her, completely still, as Maya reached into her pocket. The room had gone silent, so quiet I could hear the faint creak of the old floorboard under the Christmas tree with every slight movement. My own breath felt too loud in my chest. She withdrew a folded piece of paper. It looked small in her hands, fragile even, like something that could be crumpled and dismissed without consideration. But she held it as if it mattered, as if it meant something. I whispered, "Maya, maybe not now." She turned to me, and there was something in her eyes I didn't recognize. Not sadness, not hurt, but a calm steadiness. She gave a little nod, the kind that said, "I need to do this." Then she turned to Theodore. "I made this for you," she said. Theodore didn't even lean forward. He just glanced at it with that same bored expression he always wore when someone dared ask him to feel something. "Oh yeah," he muttered, sipping his drink. "You draw me a snowman or something?" There was sarcasm in his voice, the kind he always used when he wanted to diminish you without raising it. But Maya didn't flinch. She walked across the room and held it out to him with both hands. That's when I noticed her fingers were trembling. I knew that feeling, the way your hands betray you when your heart's pounding in your chest, when you're trying to be brave even though every part of you wants to flee. He took it from her indifferently, unfolded it with one hand while still holding his glass in the other. Then he looked down and stopped. I couldn't see what was on the paper from where I sat, but I saw his face. It didn't twist in confusion or irritation as I expected. Instead, his eyebrows drew together. He blinked once, then again. His jaw slackened slightly, as if he'd forgotten what he was doing. The entire room seemed to lean in. "What is it?" Victoria asked impatiently. He didn't answer, just stared. Maya stood there, hands clasped in front of her now, watching him quietly, as if she wasn't sure what would happen next. I rose and crossed the room slowly, almost afraid to disrupt the moment. I stood beside her and gently placed my hand on her back. She didn't look at me, she just kept her eyes on Theodore. And he looked older than I'd ever seen him. Not angry, not smug, just still. He folded the paper carefully, deliberately, almost reverently, and placed it on the side table next to his chair. Then he stood up. No one knew what to say. No one moved. He walked out of the room without a word. The sound of his footsteps down the hallway was the only thing we could hear. He didn't slam the door, didn't shout, just left. I looked down at Maya. Her voice was quiet when she asked, "Did I do something wrong?" I knelt beside her, wrapped my arms around her, and whispered, "No, sweetheart. You did something brave." Victoria muttered something under her breath, but this time I didn't care. Because I knew whatever Maya had drawn, whatever she had written, it penetrated him in a way none of us ever could. She didn't retaliate with anger. She didn't cry or scream or run. She gave him a gift, one that reminded him he was still human, even if he'd forgotten. And I think just maybe that frightened him more than anything else. I didn't see my father for the rest of the day. He didn't return to the living room, didn't come for dinner, not even when my mother announced that dessert was ready in that overly cheerful tone she used when pretending everything was fine. Maya didn't mention him again that evening. She played quietly with the ribbon from one of her other small gifts and helped me fold the wrapping paper scraps as if it were any other night. But I could tell her mind was elsewhere. Occasionally her eyes would wander toward the hallway where Theodore had disappeared, as if she were waiting for something. But nothing happened, not that day. We left early the next morning. I told them we had plans back in the city, but the truth was I couldn't bear to spend another minute pretending. Victoria didn't even get up to say goodbye. My mother handed me a foil-covered plate of leftover ham and told me to drive safely. No mention of what had happened. No one asked how Maya was feeling, and that somehow hurt even more. The ride home was quiet. Maya stared out the window, watching snow blur past the trees. I reached over and held her hand. She squeezed back. I didn't bring up the drawing. I didn't want to make her explain something that was clearly so personal. I didn't want to dissect whatever magic had existed in that moment, but I thought about it the entire drive home. What had she drawn that made my father, the man who once called me too sensitive for crying during a movie, turn pale and leave the room without a word? I found out 4 days later. It arrived in a small unmarked box left on our porch. There was no return address, just Maya's name written in careful block letters across the top. She opened it slowly, as if uncertain whether it was safe to hope. Inside was a tiny music box, old-fashioned wooden, with hand-carved edges and little roses painted around the lid. It played Somewhere Over the Rainbow when she turned the crank. And there was a note, just one line, handwritten in a shaky, unfamiliar script. To the bravest girl I know. Thank you for remembering her. No signature, but we didn't need one. Maya clutched the box to her chest as if it were made of gold. She didn't speak at first, just held it and smiled. I sat down next to her on the floor and finally asked, Maya, what did you draw for Grandpa? She looked up at me. It was a picture of him holding hands with Grandma and you, she said softly. I told him I hope he smiles again someday because I remember how she made him laugh. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak, because that was it. That was the part of him I'd forgotten even existed. The man who once smiled, once laughed, before grief hardened him, before the years made him cruel. Maya saw through all of that and gave him a fragment of something he thought he'd lost forever. Not pity, not guilt, but hope. She didn't try to fix him. She just reminded him that he used to be someone worth remembering. And in return he gave her something too. Maybe not love, maybe not forgiveness, but a beginning. Sometimes that's enough. The music box now sits on Maya's nightstand. Every night before bed, she winds it up, not always to listen. Sometimes she just likes to hold it, to feel its weight in her hands, to know it's there, the way a child might clutch a stuffed animal they've outgrown but still can't release. She hasn't mentioned much about that day since, but occasionally she'll talk about Grandma, someone she never met but speaks about as if she's still present, as if she's someone Maya knows through my stories and the quiet space she left behind. And maybe she does. Theodore never called. He didn't send a follow-up message, no apology, no explanations. That's not who he is, perhaps not who he'll ever be. But a week after the music box arrived, I received a letter. It wasn't addressed to Maya. It was for me. It was brief, 3 lines written in the same uneven handwriting. I was wrong about you. She's a remarkable child. I hope you're managing well. No name, but I knew. And for reasons I can't fully explain, I cried after reading it. Not because it made everything better. Not because it erased the years of silence or the way he used to look through me as if I were a disappointment wearing a name tag, but because for once it felt like he saw me, and more importantly, he saw Maya. He recognized what I've always known, that she's extraordinary, that she has this way of peeling back the coldness in a room and revealing people's own warmth, even when they don't deserve it. She's not loud, she doesn't demand attention, but she transforms things. She transformed him, not completely, but enough. Enough to make a man who closed the door on the world open it just a crack. Enough to make someone who believed only in toughness and silence sit down and listen to the music from a little girl's drawing. He recognized what I've always known, that she's extraordinary, that she has this way of peeling back the coldness in a room and revealing people's own warmth, even when they don't deserve it. She's not loud, she doesn't demand attention, but she transforms things. She transformed him, not completely, but enough. Enough to make a man who closed the door on the world open it just a crack. Enough to make someone who believed only in toughness and silence sit down and listen to the music from a little girl's drawing. People sometimes ask why I returned that Christmas, why I allowed them near her, why I didn't shield her more effectively. The truth is, I thought I was. I thought protecting her from their coldness would be sufficient, that avoiding discussion of them, not visiting, not engaging, would safeguard her heart. But Maya didn't need protection. She needed truth. She needed to meet them, to see the world as it is, beautiful and cruel, broken and hopeful, all intertwined. And somehow, instead of becoming lost in it, she decided to contribute her own light. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't even want an apology. She just wanted to give a gift. And that gift, as simple as it was, accomplished something I couldn't do in 30 years. It opened a door. Not wide, not permanently, but enough for a note to pass through. Enough for a song to play in the silence. Enough for a weary old man to remember a part of himself he thought was gone. Maya reminded me of something that day too, that sometimes kindness is the most radical action, that a whisper can carry more weight than a shout, and that when we choose love, even when it's difficult, even when it's unrequited, we create something no one can take away. A moment, a shift, a gift.